If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what you think will happen next. Your support means everything, and I'd love to hear your theories about Emma's past. The crystal chandelier above the Harrison dining table cast fractured rainbows across the white linen tablecloth. Emma Carter stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, her borrowed black uniform still carrying the faint scent of lavender from the previous babysitter who had quit 3 hours ago. "You must be the replacement." The voice belonged to a woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled into a severe bun, diamonds dripping from her ears like frozen tears. Victoria Harrison didn't bother to stand from her position at the head of the table. "The agency assured me you were competent. I certainly hope that's true." Emma's fingers tightened around the strap of her worn leather bag. 27 years of life had taught her to recognize predators dressed in Chanel. "I have extensive experience with children, Mrs. Harrison. Your granddaughter will be safe with me." "She's not my granddaughter." Victoria's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a different face. "Sophie is my son's daughter. I'm merely ensuring she receives proper care while Daniel finishes his business call." Christmas Eve, and still the boy can't separate himself from his precious company. A crash echoed from somewhere upstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of a child's laughter. That would be Sophie. Victoria waved a dismissive hand toward the grand staircase. "Third door on the left. Her dinner will be brought up shortly. You're not to bring her downstairs under any circumstances. The adults are having a private celebration." Emma nodded, already moving toward the stairs. She had worked enough holiday shifts at wealthy homes to understand the unspoken rules. Children were to be invisible. Convenient accessories brought out for photo opportunities and tucked away when their presence became inconvenient. The Harrison mansion sprawled across 3 floors of Beacon Hill real estate, every surface polished to a mirror shine. Oil paintings lined the hallway leading to Sophie's room, stern-faced ancestors watching Emma's progress with painted disapproval. She paused outside the third door, hearing a small voice engaged in animated conversation. And then the princess said no, she wouldn't marry the mean king because he never shared his cookies. Emma knocked softly before pushing the door open. The room beyond was a masterpiece of childhood fantasy, canopied bed draped in pink silk, shelves overflowing with toys that had never been touched. In the center of it all sat a small girl with wild brown curls and her father's serious gray eyes, surrounded by a court of stuffed animals. "Hello, Sophie, I'm Emma. I'm going to be spending the evening with you." Sophie regarded her with the unblinking assessment that only children and cats could manage. "You're prettier than the last one. She smelled like medicine, and she wouldn't let me have my cookies before dinner." "Well, I happen to believe that Christmas Eve has different rules than regular days." Emma crossed the plush carpet and settled onto the floor beside the stuffed animal kingdom. "Who's this distinguished gentleman?" She gestured to a threadbare rabbit missing one button eye. "That's Mr. Whiskers, he's the Prime Minister. He's very important but also very sad because his wife went to heaven like my mommy." Emma's heart clenched. She had read the brief file the agency provided. Daniel Harrison, widower, single father, CEO of Harrison Technologies, wife deceased 2 years prior. "Mr. Whiskers is lucky to have such a good friend to take care of him." Sophie's face brightened. "You understand? The last babysitter said toys don't have feelings." She was wrong. Everyone has feelings, even the ones who pretend they don't. Daddy pretends, but I know he's sad inside. Grandmother never pretends. She's just mean all the way through, like a chocolate with no filling. A knock at the door interrupted Sophie's character assessment. A woman in a housekeeper's uniform entered carrying a silver tray, her dark hair streaked with gray, features arranged in an expression of professional neutrality. "Miss Sophie's dinner," she announced, setting the tray on a small table near the window. Her eyes flickered to Emma with something that might have been recognition, but it happened so quickly Emma thought she had imagined it. "I'm Margaret, the head housekeeper. Ring if you need anything." "Thank you, Margaret." Emma watched the woman retreat, an uncomfortable prickle at the base of her skull. Something about those eyes, the way she had looked at Emma, but that was impossible. Emma didn't know anyone in Boston's wealthy circles anymore. Those doors had slammed shut 3 years ago. Sophie abandoned her stuffed animal parliament to investigate dinner. The tray held a small portion of roasted chicken, vegetables cut into perfect cubes, and a crystal glass of what appeared to be sparkling cider. Beside the plate sat a small velvet box. "Ooh, a present." Sophie reached for the box with eager fingers. "Maybe we should wait until after dinner," Emma suggested. But Sophie had already pried open the lid. Inside, nestled on white satin, lay a pair of diamond earrings identical to the ones dripping from Victoria Harrison's ears downstairs. Their grandmother's extra special earrings. Sophie's nose wrinkled. She said I could practice wearing them so I'd look pretty for the Christmas photo tomorrow. But they pinch and they're not comfortable. And I don't want to. Emma reached for the box. How about we put these somewhere safe and you eat your dinner? We can figure out the earrings later. Okay. Sophie handed over the velvet box without argument, already more interested in her chicken. Emma, will you tell me a story while I eat? A real one, not from a book. The kind that comes from inside your head. Emma settled into the chair across from the little girl, the box of diamonds heavy in her palm. Once upon a time there was a princess who didn't live in a castle. She lived in a tiny apartment and she worked very hard every day. But she had a secret. She used to live in a castle long ago before a wicked witch told lies about her and took everything away. Sophie chewed thoughtfully. What happened to the princess? She's still figuring that out. Emma's voice softened. But she believes that one day the truth will come out and everyone will know she was innocent all along. The dinner continued in comfortable rhythm. Sophie chattering between bites about school and her favorite teacher, and the Christmas pageant where she had played an angel. Emma found herself relaxing for the first time in months, drawn into the child's uncomplicated world of simple joys. She had just started another story when Sophie suddenly stopped mid-laugh, her small face going red. Sophie? Emma was on her feet instantly. Sophie, what's wrong? The child's hands flew to her throat, eyes wide with panic. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't speak. Her lips were turning blue. Emma's training kicked in before conscious thought could intervene. 3 years since she had touched a patient. 3 years since the medical board had stripped away her license, but muscle memory never forgot. She positioned Sophie, administered the Heimlich maneuver with practiced precision. 1 thrust. 2. On the third, something flew from Sophie's mouth and clattered across the hardwood floor. The child gasped, sucking in air, and promptly burst into tears. Emma pulled her close, heart hammering against her ribs. You're okay, sweetheart. You're okay. I've got you. She held Sophie until the sobs subsided into hiccups, then gently set her in the bed before turning to retrieve the obstruction. Her blood ran cold. A diamond earring lay on the floor, catching the light from the crystal chandelier, one of the earrings from the velvet box, the box that had been delivered with Sophie's dinner, the box that Emma had taken away before Sophie could touch the jewelry inside. Emma's hands trembled as she picked up the earring. The child had never touched this box. The diamonds had been secure on the table while Sophie ate. There was only one explanation that made any sense. The earring had been in Sophie's food. Someone had tried to kill this child. The door burst open. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, gray eyes scanning the room with barely contained panic. He wore a suit that cost more than Emma's yearly salary, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, as if he had been in the middle of undressing when the screaming started. Sophie? Daniel Harrison crossed the room in 3 strides, gathering his daughter into his arms. I heard screaming. What happened? Is she hurt? She choked. Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. I performed the Heimlich. She expelled the obstruction. Daniel's attention snapped to Emma for the first time, really seeing her. Whatever he found in her face made him pause. You saved her life. I did what anyone would have done. No. His grip on Sophie tightened. Not anyone. You knew exactly what to do. You moved like someone who has done this before. Emma said nothing. The diamond earring burned in her palm like an accusation. What did she choke on? Daniel's voice dropped. Dangerous now. What was in her throat? Slowly, Emma opened her hand. Daniel stared at the earring for a long moment. When he looked up, all the warmth had drained from his face, leaving something cold and lethal behind. Where did this come from? It was in her food. Emma met his gaze steadily. Mr. Harrison, someone put that earring in your daughter's dinner. Someone in this house tried to hurt Sophie. The accusation hung in the air between them, heavy as the falling snow outside. Somewhere downstairs, Victoria Harrison's laughter echoed through the mansion, bright and brittle as breaking glass. Daniel Harrison had built an empire on his ability to read people. Boardrooms, hostile takeovers, negotiations that determined the fate of thousands. He had learned to spot weakness, to identify lies, to recognize when someone was hiding the truth behind their eyes. The woman standing before him now was hiding something. He was absolutely certain of it, but she had also just saved his daughter's life. Everyone downstairs. Now. Daniel's voice carried the same authority that had made grown men tremble during quarterly reviews. Margaret, security, my mother. Everyone who had access to this kitchen tonight. I want them in my study in 10 minutes. Sophie clung to his neck, her small body still trembling. Daddy, I don't feel good. I know, sweetheart. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You're going to stay with Emma while I figure out what happened, okay? The new babysitter? Sophie's voice was muffled against his shoulder. She told me a story about a princess who lost her castle. Daniel's gaze cut back to Emma Carter. The agency file had listed her credentials. Background check cleared, references verified. 27 years old, originally from Vermont, currently residing in a small apartment in South Boston. Nothing remarkable, nothing concerning, nothing that explained why she had executed a perfect Heimlich maneuver with the precision of a trained physician. Will you stay with her? The question came out rougher than he intended. I need to handle this, but I don't want her alone. Of course. Emma moved to collect Sophie from his arms, her touch gentle but confident. We'll continue our story. Maybe the princess finds some allies. Something passed between them, an understanding Daniel couldn't quite name. He nodded once and strode from the room, the diamond earring clenched in his fist. The study on the first floor had been his father's domain before the heart attack 6 years ago. Daniel had changed nothing. The same mahogany desk, leather chairs, walls lined with first editions and family photographs. His mother hated this room. She said it smelled like death and old decisions. Tonight it would smell like truth. Victoria arrived first, diamonds still glittering at her ears. Daniel, what is this about? We have guests waiting for dessert. The Pembertons specifically requested your presence. Sophie nearly died tonight. Daniel watched his mother's face for any flicker of genuine emotion. She choked on something in her food. Victoria's hand fluttered to her pearls. How dreadful. I trust she's recovered. Children are always putting things in their mouths. She choked on this. He opened his palm to reveal the earring. For just an instant, something flickered in Victoria's eyes. Recognition? Fear? It vanished before Daniel could identify it. That looks like one of my earrings. How on earth did it end up in Sophie's food? That's what I intend to find out. Margaret entered next, followed by 2 members of the security team. The housekeeper's face remained carefully neutral, though Daniel noticed her eyes dart to the earring in his hand. Mr. Harrison. Margaret's voice was steady. I prepared Sophie's tray myself, as I do every evening. I can assure you there was nothing unusual about her meal. Someone put that earring in my daughter's dinner. Daniel's patience had worn thin hours ago. Someone in this house wanted to harm a 5-year-old child on Christmas Eve. I want to know who, and I want to know why. The security footage from the kitchen told a partial story. Margaret preparing the tray, arranging the food with practiced efficiency, the velvet box placed beside the plate, a gap of 3 minutes where the camera angle failed to capture the counter where the tray sat waiting. 3 minutes. Long enough for someone to drop an earring into a child's food. Who had access to the kitchen during those 3 minutes? Daniel demanded. Several staff members passed through. The head of security, a former military man named Collins, pulled up a list. Catering staff for the dinner party, 2 housekeepers, and Mrs. Harrison briefly appeared to inspect the wine selection. Victoria's chin lifted. I was checking on the champagne. Sophie's dinner tray was not my concern. The earring matches your set, Mother. I have 6 pairs of these earrings, Daniel. Your father bought them for me over the years. Any number of people could have accessed my jewelry box. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Daniel studied his mother's face, searching for the woman who had once sung him lullabies and made hot chocolate during snowstorms. That woman had disappeared somewhere in the years since his father's death, replaced by this calculating creature who valued social standing above all else, including perhaps her own granddaughter. I want the staff questioned. Daniel turned to Collins. Every person who entered that kitchen tonight, and I want the new babysitter brought to my study. Emma Carter. You suspect the babysitter? Victoria's laugh held no warmth. The girl who supposedly saved Sophie's life? How convenient that she was there to play hero. The suggestion planted itself in Daniel's mind like a poisonous seed. Was it possible? Could Emma have orchestrated the entire scenario, staging a rescue to ingratiate herself with the family? No. He had seen the terror on her face, the way her hands had moved with desperate precision. That wasn't performance, that was training. Emma appeared at his door 10 minutes later, Sophie asleep in the guest room with a security guard posted outside. She had changed from her babysitter's uniform into simple jeans and a gray sweater, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. Without the formal clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable, and more familiar. Something about the way she carried herself, the set of her jaw, the intelligence in her blue eyes. Daniel had seen that face before, but he couldn't place where. "Mr. Harrison." She stopped in front of his desk. "Is Sophie all right?" "She's sleeping." The doctor checked her and confirmed no permanent damage. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please sit." Emma lowered herself into the leather seat, her posture straight but not rigid. She was nervous, he realized, but not because she was guilty. She was nervous because she was hiding something. "The agency sent over your file," Daniel began. "Clean background, good references. Nothing remarkable." "I'm not a remarkable person, Mr. Harrison." "You're lying." The words came out flat, factual. "You performed a medical procedure tonight with the skill of a trained professional. Your hands didn't shake. You didn't hesitate. You moved like someone who had done it 1,000 times before." Emma's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "I took a first aid course." "First aid courses don't teach you to stay calm while a child is dying in your arms." Daniel leaned forward. "Who are you, Emma Carter? What are you really doing in my house?" For a long moment she said nothing. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the seconds. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing Boston in pristine white. "I was a doctor," Emma finally said. "A pediatric surgeon at Massachusetts General, one of the youngest to complete the fellowship program. I was good at it, really good." Daniel felt the pieces clicking into place. "Was? 3 years ago I was accused of malpractice. A child died during surgery. The procedure was complicated, but we had done everything right. Everything." Her voice caught. "The family sued. The investigation cleared my team initially, but then a nurse came forward. She testified that I had made critical errors, that I had been negligent. Her testimony was compelling enough that the medical board suspended my license pending review. And the review? Still pending." Emma's laugh was bitter. 3 years of pending. 3 years of working minimum wage jobs while lawyers argue about my future. I lost my apartment, my savings, my life. Everything I worked for since I was 18 years old. Daniel processed this information, filing it away for later verification. "The nurse who testified against you, do you know where she is now?" "No. She disappeared after the hearing. I hired a private investigator, spent the last of my savings trying to find her. Nothing." Emma met his eyes directly. "Why are you asking?" Instead of answering, Daniel opened his laptop and pulled up the security footage. He paused on a frame showing Margaret in the kitchen, her face clearly visible. Emma went pale. "You recognize her," Daniel said quietly. "That's not possible." Emma's voice had dropped to a whisper. "That's not Margaret. That's Linda Chen. She was the nurse. She's the one who destroyed my life." The revelation hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle, acrid and impossible to ignore. Emma stared at the image on Daniel's laptop, her mind rejecting what her eyes confirmed. Linda Chen, the woman who had lied under oath and stolen everything from her, was working in this house, had prepared the dinner tray for Sophie, had access to the kitchen during those crucial 3 minutes. "You're certain?" Daniel's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. 3 years is a long time. People change their appearance. I spent 18 months memorizing every line of that woman's face. Emma's hands had begun to shake. I watched her testify about surgeries she never witnessed, describe errors I never made. She sat 20 feet away from me while she destroyed my career with fabricated stories. I would recognize her anywhere. Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's been employed here for 2 years. Impeccable references, sterling background check. My mother personally recommended her." "Your mother knows Linda Chen?" "Margaret Chen." Daniel pulled up another file on his laptop. According to her employment records, Margaret Chen previously worked for the Pemberton family, friends of my mother's for decades. Before that, she was employed at a private nursing home in Connecticut. Emma's blood ran cold. "The nursing home where your wife's grandmother was a patient?" Daniel's hand stilled on the keyboard. "How do you know about that?" "Because I know who your wife was." The words came out before Emma could stop them. "Sarah Mitchell. We were roommates at Harvard Medical School. She was brilliant, kind, and she died 2 years ago under circumstances that never made sense to me." The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel's face had gone completely blank, a mask designed to hide whatever storm raged beneath. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Sarah died in a car accident. The road was icy. She lost control. The car went over the bridge into the harbor. The investigation ruled it accidental. Sarah was the best driver I ever knew." Emma leaned forward. "She grew up in Minnesota, learned to drive in conditions that would terrify most people. She once told me that ice was just a challenge, not a threat. Does that sound like a woman who would lose control on a Boston road in light snow? Daniel's hands clenched into fists. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the same woman who lied to destroy my career is now working in your house, and your wife died in an accident that doesn't add up. And tonight someone tried to kill your daughter with a diamond earring. Emma forced herself to breathe. Mr. Harrison, I don't believe in coincidences. Neither do I. Daniel stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Snow continued to fall outside, the garden lights casting silver shadows across his face. Sarah and I were having problems before she died. She had discovered something about my company, about deals that were made before I took over. She never told me what, but she was scared. She said she needed to talk to someone first to make sure she had the facts right. Who was she going to talk to? Her grandmother. Daniel's voice cracked. The woman in the Connecticut nursing home. Sarah visited her 3 days before the accident. When I tried to follow up afterward, the grandmother had passed away. Cardiac arrest in her sleep. Emma's mind raced through the connections, drawing lines between data points that should never have intersected. Linda Chen worked at that nursing home. She would have had access to the grandmother, and access to whatever Sarah told her. Daniel turned from the window, his gray eyes blazing. 3 years ago, a pediatric surgeon in Boston was falsely accused of malpractice. A year later, my wife dies in a suspicious accident after visiting her grandmother. 2 years after that, the same woman who testified against you is working in my house, and someone just tried to murder my daughter. Your mother hired her, Emma said carefully. On recommendation from family friends, the Pembertons. Daniel's expression darkened. Old money, old connections. They've been investing in Harrison Technologies since my father's time. Board members, shareholders, deeply embedded in everything the company does. What kind of deals were made before you took over? I don't know. My father kept certain files locked even from me. When he died, my mother took possession of his private documents. She said they were personal, sentimental. I never pushed. Emma rose from her chair, her legs steadier now that the initial shock had passed. Mr. Harrison, I came here tonight to babysit a child. I had no idea that your housekeeper was the woman who ruined my life. I had no idea that your wife was my former roommate. But now that I know these things, I can't walk away. I'm not asking you to walk away. Daniel's voice had softened, though the intensity in his eyes remained. I'm asking you to help me find the truth about Sarah, about my father's company, about whatever conspiracy has apparently been operating under my nose for years. You don't even know me. You saved my daughter's life. You recognized a threat that I was blind to, and you have more reason than anyone to want Linda Chen exposed for what she really is. Daniel stepped closer, and Emma became suddenly aware of how tall he was, how the lamplight caught the silver threading through his dark hair. I have resources, money, investigators, lawyers, but I need someone I can trust. Someone outside the web that seems to have caught everyone in my life. Emma laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet study. You want to trust the disgraced doctor who wandered into your house 3 hours ago? I want to trust the woman who didn't hesitate to save a child she had just met. The woman who recognized evil when she saw it and didn't look away. Daniel's hand reached out, not quite touching her. Emma, I know what it feels like to have everything taken from you. I've spent 2 years blaming myself for Sarah's death, wondering what I missed. If there's even a chance that she was murdered, that my daughter is in danger, I have to know. Help me. The request hung between them, weighted with implications neither could fully articulate. Outside, the church bells began to chime, midnight tolling across the snowbound city. Christmas Day. Emma thought about the past 3 years, the tiny apartment with the leaking ceiling, the parade of dead-end jobs that barely covered rent, the countless nights lying awake replaying the testimony that had ended her dreams. She had accepted her fate, had resigned herself to a life of quiet invisibility. But here, in this room full of secrets and shadows, fate was offering something different. A chance to understand why her life had been destroyed. A chance to help a man who had lost just as much as she had. A chance to protect a little girl with wild curls and her mother's forgotten smile. All right, Emma said quietly. I'll help you. But I have conditions. Daniel nodded. Name them. First, I stay here, in this house. If Linda Chen is a threat to Sophie, I need to be close enough to protect her. Done. Second, you tell me everything. No secrets, no half-truths. If we're going to unravel this, I need complete transparency. Agreed. Third, Emma hesitated. You need to know that I'm not just doing this for answers. I'm doing it because Sarah was my friend. She deserved better than an unexplained death, and Sophie deserves to know the truth about her mother. Daniel's expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable breaking through the controlled mask. Sarah talked about you, her brilliant roommate who was going to revolutionize pediatric surgery. She said you were stubborn, idealistic, and refused to accept failure. Sarah had a gift for seeing the best in people. Maybe she was right. Daniel extended his hand. Partners, then, in finding the truth. Emma took his hand. His grip was warm, strong, steadier than she expected from a man whose world had just tilted on its axis. Partners. The clock finished its midnight toll. Somewhere in the house, Victoria Harrison's voice rose in artificial laughter. The snow continued to fall, covering the city in a blanket of white that hid all manner of sins. Neither of them noticed Margaret Chen standing in the shadows of the hallway. Her eyes narrowed, her phone already connecting to a number saved under no name. "We have a problem," she whispered. "The babysitter recognized me, and she knows about Sarah Mitchell." A pause. A response Emma and Daniel couldn't hear. Margaret's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Understood. I'll handle it. After all, accidents happen so easily during the holidays." She ended the call and slipped back into the darkness, her footsteps silent on the marble floor. In the study, Emma felt a chill run down her spine, a premonition she couldn't explain. She glanced toward the door, but saw only shadows. "What is it?" Daniel asked. "Nothing." Emma shook off the feeling. "Just tired. It's been a long night. The guest room on the 3rd floor is prepared. Sophie's room is next door. I'll have security posted outside both." Emma nodded, but her unease remained. Something was watching from the darkness of this house, something patient and cold. She had faced down death before, in operating rooms where seconds meant the difference between life and tragedy. She had survived the destruction of her career, the humiliation of public disgrace, the loneliness of starting over with nothing. This was different. This was personal. Linda Chen was here, had been here for years, embedded in the Harrison household like a parasite. Whatever secret she was protecting, whatever conspiracy had led to Sarah's death, Emma was now squarely in its path. But she wasn't alone anymore. She glanced at Daniel, at the determination in his eyes, the set of his shoulders. He was a man used to fighting battles in boardrooms, not against shadows, but he was willing to learn. They both were. Tomorrow, they would begin. Tomorrow they would follow the threads that connected a disgraced doctor, a dead wife, an endangered child, and a woman hiding behind a false name. Tonight, Emma would watch over Sophie and pray that Christmas morning would bring answers instead of more questions. The snow kept falling, gentle and relentless, erasing footprints and hiding truths beneath its perfect white surface. But some truths refused to stay buried, and some secrets were worth dying to protect. 3 days had passed since Christmas Eve, and the Harrison mansion had transformed into a fortress. Security cameras monitored every entrance. Guards patrolled the grounds in shifts, and Sophie was never left alone for more than 30 seconds. The little girl accepted these changes with the adaptability of childhood, treating the constant supervision as an elaborate game of hide-and-seek with very dedicated players. Emma had moved into the guest room on the 3rd floor, her meager possessions fitting easily into a single drawer. She spent her days with Sophie, maintaining the fiction that she was simply an unusually dedicated babysitter, while her nights were consumed by research and whispered conversations with Daniel in his study. Margaret Chen continued her duties as if nothing had changed, her smile never wavering, her efficiency never faltering. She served breakfast with steady hands and cleaned rooms with methodical precision. Watching her, Emma felt the cold certainty of a predator observing prey that didn't yet know it was being hunted. "She knows we're watching her," Emma said quietly, standing beside Daniel at the window of his study. The garden below lay dormant under a fresh layer of snow, pristine and deceptive. "She's too calm, too controlled. Let her be calm." Daniel's voice carried an edge that hadn't been there a week ago. "I've hired a private investigation firm to dig into her background. The real background, not the fabricated one. They should have preliminary findings by tonight." Emma turned to study his profile, noting the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He hadn't slept more than a few hours since Christmas. Neither had she, but she had years of practice running on adrenaline and determination. Daniel was learning that skill the hard way. "Your mother has been avoiding me," Emma observed. "Every time I enter a room, she finds a reason to leave. My mother avoids anything that threatens her carefully constructed world." Daniel's laugh held no humor. She's been acting strange since Christmas, jumping at small sounds, checking her phone constantly. If I didn't know better, I'd say she was frightened. Maybe she should be. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Victoria Harrison's involvement in this conspiracy remained unclear, but the circumstantial evidence was damning. She had hired Margaret Chen. She had access to the kitchen. And according to Daniel's preliminary research, she had been the one to introduce the Pembertons to Harrison Technologies 3 decades ago. A knock at the study door interrupted their conversation. Collins, the head of security, entered with a tablet in hand. "Sir, the investigators sent their initial report. I think you'll want to see this." Daniel took the tablet, his expression darkening as he scrolled through the contents. Emma watched his face cycle through disbelief, anger, and something that looked terrifyingly close to despair. "Daniel," she touched his arm, feeling the tension coiled beneath his sleeve. "What is it?" "Margaret Chen doesn't exist." His voice came out flat, mechanical. "The real Margaret Chen died 8 years ago in a nursing home in Connecticut. The woman working in my house stole her identity. We knew she was using a false name. That's not all." Daniel handed her the tablet. "The investigators traced her real identity. Linda Chen was born Linda Pemberton. She's Arthur Pemberton's younger sister." The revelation hit Emma like a physical blow. Arthur Pemberton, the family friend who had recommended Margaret for employment. Arthur Pemberton, whose family had been investing in Harrison Technologies for 3 decades. Arthur Pemberton, whose wife had been Victoria Harrison's closest confidant since their debutante days. "The Pembertons are behind everything," Emma breathed. "The malpractice accusation, Sarah's death, the attack on Sophie, but why?" "Because of this." Daniel pulled up another document on his laptop, his fingers trembling slightly. "I finally found my father's private files. They were hidden in a safety deposit box that my mother claimed didn't exist. Inside was evidence of a deal made 30 years ago, when Harrison Technologies was struggling and the Pembertons offered a lifeline." Emma leaned over his shoulder to read, acutely aware of the heat radiating from his body, the scent of his cologne mixing with something darker, more primal, fear perhaps, or rage barely contained. "They laundered money through your father's company," she realized. "Millions of dollars over 3 decades, all hidden in legitimate business transactions. My father discovered the truth 5 years before he died. He tried to extract the company, to make things right. That's when the Pembertons started tightening their grip. Board seats, shareholder agreements, contracts that gave them veto power over major decisions." Daniel's fist slammed against the desk. He was trapped. They owned him. And Sarah found out. She must have. Daniel's voice broke. Her grandmother was Arthur Pemberton's former nanny. The old woman probably knew secrets going back decades. Sarah visited her, learned something dangerous, and 3 days later she was dead. Emma placed her hand over his clenched fist, feeling the tremor running through him. "Daniel, we can stop them. We have evidence now, documentation. We can take this to the authorities. And implicate my father's memory? Destroy the company he built? Thousands of employees would lose their jobs. My family's legacy would be reduced to a criminal enterprise. Your family's legacy right now includes a woman who tried to murder your daughter." Emma's voice sharpened. "Sophie matters more than reputation. Your father made choices that put her in danger. You have to make different ones." The words struck home. Emma watched the struggle play across Daniel's face. Duty warring with love. Legacy battling against the simple truth of a child sleeping peacefully 1 floor above. "You're right." The admission came slowly, painfully. "Sophie is all that matters. Everything else can burn." Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. The number was blocked, but the contents made her blood run cold. "Dr. Carter, I know you've been investigating. I know what you've found. Meet me at the warehouse on Pier 7 tonight at midnight. Come alone or the next accident will be fatal. Not for you. For the little girl with the wild curls who likes stories about princesses." Emma showed Daniel the message, watching his face drain of color. "It's a trap," he said immediately. "You can't go." "I have to." Emma's voice was steady, though her heart raced. "She's threatening Sophie. If I don't show up, she might act on that threat. Then I'm coming with you. The message says alone." "I don't care what the message says." Daniel gripped her shoulders, his gray eyes blazing. "Emma, I've lost too much already. I'm not losing you too." The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither had acknowledged aloud. Over the past 3 days, something had shifted in their relationship. The professional distance had eroded, replaced by late-night conversations and shared meals, and moments where their hands brushed accidentally and neither pulled away. Emma had told herself it was circumstance, proximity, the intensity of their shared mission. She had ignored the way her pulse quickened when he entered a room, the warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled at something Sophie said. She had buried feelings that had no place in the midst of danger and conspiracy. But standing here with his hands on her shoulders and desperation in his voice, she couldn't pretend anymore. Daniel. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the rough stubble beneath her fingers. I need to do this. For Sophie, for Sarah, for my own future. But I need you to stay here and protect your daughter. Promise me. Emma, please. Promise me. The struggle in his eyes was agonizing to watch. Finally, his shoulders sagged in defeat. I promise. But you're taking Collins with you. He'll stay in the car, out of sight, but close enough to help if things go wrong. Okay. Emma allowed herself one moment of weakness, leaning into his touch. When this is over, when Sophie is safe and the truth is exposed, we should talk about what happens next. I'd like that. Daniel's thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. Come back to me, Emma. Whatever happens tonight, come back. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and stepped away from his warmth into the cold reality of what lay ahead. The warehouse on Pier 7 waited in the darkness, patient and hungry, and Linda Pemberton was ready to finish what she'd started 3 years ago. The hours until midnight crawled past like wounded animals. Emma prepared methodically, reviewing the building layouts Collins had obtained, memorizing exit routes, considering every possible scenario. She wore dark clothes, practical shoes, and carried a small recording device hidden in her jacket lining. At 11:30, she kissed Sophie's sleeping forehead and whispered a promise to return. At 11:45, she climbed into the unmarked SUV where Collins waited, his face grim but determined. At midnight exactly, she pushed open the warehouse door and stepped into the shadows. The space was vast and empty, the kind of abandoned industrial building that horror movies used as backdrops for final confrontations. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, casting silver patterns on the concrete floor. Dr. Carter, Linda Pemberton's voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness. Thank you for being punctual. I always appreciated that about you. Emma turned toward the sound, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. I don't recall punctuality being relevant during our previous encounters. You were too busy lying about me under oath. A figure emerged from behind a rusted piece of machinery. Linda looked different than she had in the Harrison household, her housekeeper's meekness replaced by something sharp and predatory. She wore expensive clothes now, her posture radiating the confidence of old money and older secrets. The lies were necessary, Linda said calmly. You were getting too close to the truth about the Hartfield case. The child who died on your table? His father was one of our accountants. He stumbled across the money trail and threatened to expose everything. We needed him discredited, destroyed. Your conviction would have accomplished that. Emma's stomach turned. You killed a child to protect your money laundering operation? The child's death was unfortunate but unavoidable. The surgery was sabotaged long before you entered that operating room. All we needed was a scapegoat. Linda smiled. You were perfect. Young, ambitious, no powerful connections to protect you. One corrupted nurse and a few carefully placed accusations and your career was over. Why are you telling me this? Because you're not leaving here alive. Linda's hand emerged from her coat pocket, holding a small pistol. Neither is Daniel Harrison eventually, or that annoying child. The Pembertons have spent 30 years building an empire inside Harrison Technologies. We're not about to let a disgraced doctor and a lovesick CEO tear it down. Emma forced herself to remain calm, acutely aware of the recording device capturing every word. You'll never get away with it. Daniel has the evidence. If anything happens to me, it goes straight to the FBI. Daniel Harrison is currently driving toward this warehouse despite his promise to stay home. Linda's smile widened. My people intercepted his security team's communications. He should arrive in approximately 10 minutes. Just enough time for me to deal with you and prepare a suitable welcome for him. Fear clawed at Emma's throat, but she pushed it down. Daniel was coming. Collins was outside. She just needed to keep Linda talking until help arrived. What about Victoria? Emma asked. Is she part of this? Linda laughed. Victoria Harrison is a useful idiot. She introduced us to her husband's company, but she has no idea about the extent of our operations. She believes we're simply investors, family friends helping to manage the Harrison fortune. When her son and granddaughter meet their tragic ends, she'll inherit everything and sign it over to us without a second thought. The warehouse door crashed open. Daniel burst through, Collins at his heels, both men armed and moving with military precision. Nobody's signing anything. Daniel's voice rang through the empty space. It's over, Linda. For a moment, chaos reigned. Linda fired wildly, the shots echoing off metal walls. Collins tackled her to the ground, wrestling the gun from her grip. Daniel reached Emma in 3 strides, pulling her behind a concrete pillar, his body shielding hers. I thought I told you to stay home, Emma breathed. I lied. Daniel's arms tightened around her. I couldn't let you face this alone. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Collins had Linda pinned, reading her rights while she screamed threats and accusations. It was over. Except it wasn't. Not really. The hard part was just beginning. The aftermath of the warehouse confrontation unfolded across television screens, newspaper headlines, and endless social media debates. Arthur Pemberton was arrested at his country club, still wearing his golf clothes, his face a mask of aristocratic disbelief. 4 more Pemberton associates followed, including 2 Harrison Technologies board members and a state senator who had been helping to cover their tracks for over a decade. Victoria Harrison sat in her son's study, smaller than Emma had ever seen her. The diamonds were gone from her ears, her silver hair loose and unkempt. She looked every one of her 67 years and more. I didn't know. Victoria's voice trembled. Daniel, you have to believe me. I thought they were friends. I thought they were helping us. Daniel stood at the window, his back to his mother. You introduced them to father. You recommended Linda Chen for employment. You had access to Sophie's dinner tray on Christmas Eve. The earring was an accident. Tears streaked Victoria's powdered cheeks. I went to the kitchen to check on the wine, and my earring fell off. I thought it landed on the counter, but in the chaos of the dinner party I forgot to look for it. Look, I never imagined someone would use it to hurt Sophie. Emma watched the exchange from her position near the door, her heart aching for both of them. The investigation had confirmed Victoria's innocence in the conspiracy, but her willful blindness had enabled decades of criminal activity. She had chosen not to see, not to question, not to protect. Sarah tried to tell me. Victoria's voice cracked. Before she died, she came to me with questions about the Pembertons. I told her she was being paranoid. I told her to focus on her marriage and stop digging into business matters. A sob escaped her. If I had listened, she might still be alive. Daniel finally turned, and Emma saw the war raging behind his eyes. This was his mother, the woman who had raised him, comforted him, shaped him into the man he'd become. But she was also the woman whose negligence had cost him his wife and nearly cost him his daughter. I need time, Daniel said quietly. Sophie needs time. You should stay with Aunt Patricia for a while. When things settle down, when I can think clearly, we'll talk about what comes next. Victoria nodded, rising on unsteady legs. At the door, she paused, her eyes finding Emma's. Take care of them, please. I know I have no right to ask, but they need someone to protect them from the darkness in this world. I thought I was that person, but I was wrong. Emma said nothing. What could she say to a woman who had lost everything through her own blindness? The door closed behind Victoria, leaving Emma and Daniel alone in the study that had become their war room. The silence stretched between them, heavy with exhaustion and unspoken feelings. The medical board called this morning. Emma broke the quiet carefully. Linda's confession, combined with the evidence we found, is enough to overturn the malpractice ruling. My license will be reinstated within 30 days. Daniel turned to her, genuine joy breaking through the clouds of grief. Emma, that's wonderful. You can go back to surgery. You can reclaim your life. I can. She moved closer, drawn by a force she no longer tried to resist. But I've been thinking about what that life should look like. What do you mean? 3 years ago, surgery was everything to me. My identity, my purpose, my reason for existing. Losing it nearly destroyed me. Emma reached out, taking his hand in hers. But these past weeks have shown me something different. There's more to life than operating rooms and medical journals. There's family, connection, love. Daniel's breath caught. Emma, I'm not saying I won't go back to medicine. I worked too hard for too long to walk away completely, but I don't want it to consume me the way it did before. She squeezed his hand. I want to be there for Sophie. I want to help her understand who her mother was and what she sacrificed. I want to be part of something bigger than my own ambitions. And what about us? The question came out rough, vulnerable. Is there an us? Emma answered by rising on her toes and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, 2 wounded souls testing the waters of something new. Then Daniel's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and the gentleness gave way to years of loneliness and longing finally finding release. When they separated, both breathing hard, Emma saw tears tracking down Daniel's cheeks. I haven't let myself feel anything since Sarah died. His voice was barely a whisper. I convinced myself that loving someone was too dangerous, that it only led to loss and pain. But you walked into my house on Christmas Eve and saved my daughter's life, and everything I believed started crumbling. I know. Emma wiped his tears with gentle fingers. I felt it too. The connection, the recognition, like we were meant to find each other in the middle of all this chaos. Sarah would have liked you. Daniel laughed softly. She would have called this fate. She always believed that the universe pushed people together for reasons we couldn't understand. Maybe she was right. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the weight of the past week settle into something manageable. Outside, the winter sun was finally breaking through the clouds, casting golden light across the snow-covered garden. A small voice interrupted their moment. "Daddy? Emma?" Sophie stood in the doorway. Mr. Whiskers clutched in her arms, her wild curls even more untamed than usual. She had been remarkably resilient through the chaos of recent days, but Emma could see the uncertainty in her gray eyes, so like her father's. "Hey, sweetheart." Daniel crouched to meet his daughter at eye level. "What's wrong? Is grandmother coming back?" Sophie's lower lip trembled. She looked sad when she left. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." Daniel pulled Sophie into his arms. "Grandmother just needs some time away. Sometimes grown-ups need to think about things by themselves. Like when I go to my thinking corner after I make bad choices." "Exactly like that." Sophie nodded sagely, then turned her attention to Emma. "Are you staying? The last babysitter left, and the one before her, and the one before that. But you're different. You saved me from choking, and you tell the best stories, and you make Daddy smile." Emma knelt beside Daniel, her heart swelling. "I'd like to stay, Sophie. If that's okay with you and your father." "It's very okay." Sophie's face brightened. "Can we have pancakes to celebrate?" Daniel laughed, a genuine sound of joy. "Pancakes it is, but I'm warning you, I'm a terrible cook. We might end up with hockey pucks." "Emma can teach you." Sophie grabbed both their hands, tugging them toward the door. "She's probably good at everything. She's a princess who lost her castle, but now she found a new one, with a king who needed someone to make him smile, and a princess who needed a friend." Emma met Daniel's eyes over Sophie's head, seeing her own wonder reflected back at her. From tragedy had come something unexpected and precious, a family forming in the most unlikely circumstances. "She's not wrong," Daniel murmured. "You did find a new castle." "I found something better." Emma squeezed his hand. "I found home." Together, the three of them walked toward the kitchen, leaving the shadows of the study behind. There would be challenges ahead, healing that would take time, wounds that would need tending. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The snow continued to melt outside, winter slowly releasing its grip on Boston. Spring was coming, and with it, a new beginning. 6 months had transformed the Harrison mansion from a house of secrets into a home filled with laughter. The formal dining room that had once hosted Victoria's rigid dinner parties now echoed with Sophie's giggling as she attempted to teach Emma the proper way to host a stuffed animal tea party. Daniel watched from the doorway, his heart fuller than he had ever imagined possible. The woman who had stumbled into his life on Christmas Eve had become its center, her presence weaving through every aspect of their days. She had returned to medicine, but on her own terms, working 3 days a week at a children's clinic in South Boston, while dedicating the rest of her time to their unconventional family. "You're doing it wrong again." Sophie's voice carried the patient exasperation of a 5-year-old dealing with incompetent adults. "Mr. Whiskers takes his tea with 2 sugars, not 1. Everyone knows that. My sincerest apologies to Mr. Whiskers." Emma added an imaginary sugar cube to the Prime Minister's cup. "I'll try to remember his preferences in the future." Daniel cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Ladies, I hate to interrupt such important diplomatic negotiations, but I need to borrow Emma for a moment." Sophie narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "You always want to borrow Emma. She's supposed to be playing with me. I promised to return her in perfect condition." Daniel crossed the room and scooped his daughter into his arms, planting a kiss on her cheek. "Besides, I have a very special question to ask her, and I need your help." "What kind of question?" Daniel whispered in Sophie's ear. Her eyes went wide, then her face split into the biggest smile Emma had ever seen. "Really? Really, really?" Sophie bounced in his arms. "Can I help? Can I be part of it?" "That's why I'm telling you first." Daniel set her down. Go to my study and bring the small blue box from my desk drawer, but be very careful with it. It's extremely important." Sophie took off running, her footsteps thundering through the hallway. Emma watched her go with a puzzled expression. What was that about? Daniel took her hand, leading her toward the garden doors. "Walk with me?" The garden had been replanted in the spring, Sarah's roses given a place of honor beside a new flower bed that Emma had designed. Tulips and daffodils swayed in the June breeze, their colors vibrant against the restored stone pathways. It was Emma's favorite place in the entire estate, a symbol of renewal and growth. Daniel led her to a wrought iron bench beneath an ancient oak tree, the same bench where they had shared their first kiss after everything had finally settled. Emma sat, Daniel remaining standing, his expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. 6 months ago, I was a man who had given up on happiness. His voice was steady, but she could see the emotion in his eyes. I had convinced myself that my life would be board meetings and business deals and watching my daughter grow up from a distance. Then you appeared in my house, saved Sophie's life, and proceeded to dismantle every wall I had built around my heart. Daniel, let me finish. He smiled, that crooked smile that still made her breath catch. You taught me that strength isn't about controlling everything. It's about trusting the right people. You showed me that Sophie needs a mother, not just a father who provides for her. You proved that second chances aren't just possible, they're worth fighting for. Sophie came running across the garden, her hands cupped carefully around something precious. She skidded to a stop beside her father, bouncing with barely contained excitement. Did I miss it? Did he ask yet? Not yet, sweetheart. Daniel took the small blue box from his daughter's hands and lowered himself to one knee. Emma's heart stopped. Emma Carter, disgraced doctor, reluctant babysitter, and the bravest woman I've ever known. Daniel opened the box to reveal a ring, simple and elegant, a single diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires that matched her eyes. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Say yes, Sophie demanded. Say yes so we can have cake and you can be my mommy forever. Emma laughed through the tears streaming down her face. That's quite a compelling argument from your negotiation team. I trained her well. Daniel's smile wavered, vulnerability breaking through. Is that a yes? Yes. Emma pulled him to his feet and into her arms. 1,000 times yes. Sophie cheered loudly enough to startle birds from the nearby trees, then inserted herself between them, demanding to be part of the embrace. The three of them stood there, tangled together in the garden that had witnessed so much transformation, laughing and crying and holding on tight. And the wedding took place 3 months later, on a crisp September afternoon in the same garden. The guest list was small by Harrison's standards, but perfect by Emma's measure. Her parents had flown in from Vermont, still slightly dazed by their daughter's dramatic change in circumstances. Her former colleagues from Massachusetts General attended, including the chief of surgery who had personally apologized for doubting her innocence. Dr. Martinez, the clinic director who had given Emma a chance when no one else would, served as her maid of honor. Sophie walked down the aisle as flower girl, taking her duties with solemn seriousness until she spotted her father waiting at the altar and broke into a run. Daniel caught her, hoisting her onto his hip, where she remained throughout the ceremony. Victoria Harrison watched from the third row, her expression a complicated mixture of joy and regret. The past 6 months had changed her too, therapy and reflection stripping away layers of denial. She would never fully repair her relationship with Daniel, but she was trying. Emma had encouraged the reconciliation, understanding that healing was rarely linear. Linda Pemberton was serving 15 years in federal prison, her testimony having brought down the entire network her family had built. Arthur Pemberton had received 20 years, his fortune seized, his reputation destroyed. The Harrison Technologies Board had been purged of corrupt members, rebuilt with people Daniel trusted to uphold his father's original vision. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The officiant smiled warmly. You may kiss the bride. Daniel kissed Emma while Sophie covered her eyes and made exaggerated gagging noises, and the small crowd burst into applause. Later, after the reception had wound down and the last guests had departed, Daniel found Emma standing at the window of their bedroom, still in her wedding dress looking out over the moonlit garden. Having second thoughts, he wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. Third and fourth thoughts, actually. She turned in his embrace, smiling. But they're all good ones. Care to share? I was thinking about fate. Emma traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. About how one random babysitting assignment on Christmas Eve led to all of this. About Sarah, and whether she somehow orchestrated everything from wherever she is now. Daniel considered this, his expression softening. She would have wanted Sophie to have a mother who loved her. She would have wanted me to find happiness again. Maybe fate is just another word for the people we've lost looking out for us. That's surprisingly philosophical for a CEO. I've been practicing. Sophie says I need to be more imaginative. Emma laughed, the sound bright and free. She's been making you participate in stuffed animal parliament again, hasn't she? Mr. Whiskers passed a resolution about mandatory bedtime stories. I've been appointed official storyteller. Daniel's smile faded into something more serious. Emma, I know our story started with tragedy and secrets and danger, but I want you to know that I consider myself the luckiest man alive, not because of the company or the money or any of that, because I found you. We found each other. Emma kissed him softly. Two broken people who somehow fit together perfectly, like puzzle pieces, like home. Somewhere down the hall, Sophie's voice called out, requesting her promised bedtime story. They separated reluctantly, hands intertwined as they walked toward their daughter's room. The story Sophie requested that night was familiar by now, told and retold over the past months until it had become legend. The story of a princess who lost her castle, but found something better. The story of a king who forgot how to smile until a stranger reminded him. The story of a little girl who brought them all together through an accident that was really a miracle in disguise. And they lived happily ever after? Sophie asked, as she always did. Emma looked at Daniel over their daughter's curly head, seeing her entire future reflected in his gray eyes. Yes, sweetheart, they lived happily ever after. Outside the window, stars wheeled through the September sky, indifferent to human joy and sorrow. But inside the Harrison home, warmth and love and laughter had finally taken root. Not every fairy tale begins with once upon a time. Some begin with a choking child on Christmas Eve, a desperate stranger, and a diamond earring that should have been a weapon but became instead the key to everything. The end. Or rather, the beginning.